To me, the Eagles are less about deficiency and more about mystery. Okay. I mean, this is a new look team with a new look coaching staff, a quarterback who saw some action last year, a defense that fell off, even though they still have a lot of quality defensive linemen, but their defense is been deteriorating. The team gave up the most sacks in the league last year, and I know that had to do with key injuries on the offensive line.
Birds 365 with the Mac and Mac guys. John McMullen, Jody McDonald here with you. Joining us on our stream is one of my best friends when it comes to the world of football. He and I did time together at ESPN, and he's been coming to my shows for decades now. Russell Baxter joins us here on Birds 365. How are you, Russell?
I'm doing terrific, John. It's a pleasure to meet you. And, I was actually talking about you yesterday, Jody. It was getting a little golf in, and an old colleague, I don't know if you remember Craig Wax, who used to work with me in the research department, talking about the fact that I remember first coming on the air with you in 1988.
Oh, wow.
Which was 5 years before free agency even started.
Okay? 1988. Was that Plan B free agency, Russell? Was that?
Oh, it's on the verge of it, I think. Yeah. I want to say Plan B started like 1990 or something like that. I mean, 1988. The 88 season was the year the Niners won their third Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And we were coming off a strike year. And, guys like Frank Ross and Peter Hayes and all the old gang and stuff, and great memories from College and Pro Football News Weekly and then ESPN. And I was actually at an ESPN reunion a week and a half ago that they had. Saw Boomer and, Boomer, not the Boomer on the Hawaiian swimming and fish diet right now. He looks absolutely tremendous.
Wow.
Yeah. Get out of here. And they still got him working. He just agreed to continue doing stuff on the internet for them, right?
Yeah. Listen, I was lucky enough to work on Primetime in the studio for 17 years with Tommy and Boomer, who are close friends. And, the popularity of that show when they were on it it's probably the best show in the history of ESPN. I say that I'm saying that maybe biasly, but unbiasedly, because I can remember the reaction from players who would get back in the locker room and watch it. And I can tell you, doing that show live, wow. I mean, just so much fun. And the chemistry between Chris and Tommy. And it was really, Jody and John, the late highlights, because the early highlights, you got the screen in advance. The late highlights, here come the PAs, and they're handing them the shot sheets, and they're seeing this stuff for the first time. And, just the magic of the two of them together was fantastic. I was part of something extremely special.
Yeah, Russell, those days were great because everything wasn't watered down. So you have this immediacy now, which is great, but you didn't have that build-up, the build to see Chris and Tom do that stuff on an NFL Sunday. Even going back further, I mean, you remember Monday Night Football halftime highlights. When people used to have to wait to see teams out of market, to see, in a lot of ways it seems silly to the younger generation, but it built up a lot of the popularity because people were waiting for it. They were desperate for it. It was a great time. You obviously can't go back to it.
Yeah, you relied on Howard Cosell's halftime highlights.
Yeah, sure.
If you were a team that was not in a big market. Now you watch a game on your phone. Now you watch a game on your watch. Now you watch a game on your laptop. Yeah. We have NFL Red Zone, which I think is phenomenal. Yeah. Scott Hansen does an absolutely fantastic job. And I know a lot of those people who work at NFL Network because I used to work with them and so on. But, when you try to talk to people today, it sounds weird. When you talk to people today about how I used to watch football and we used to watch football, they don't really understand it. Like, oh, you mean you couldn't see all the games? Oh, what games? Okay. And now it's so much different. There's so much access, and but for me, it's so much fun. I mean, I've been watching football for more than 50 years, which is hard to believe because I'm only, 33.
All right, Russell, let's get down to this upcoming year, which again, I get this, but every time I see it, I roll my eyes. the biggest season in the history of the National Football League. Why? Because they're going to play a 17th game. Just me, I would wait till after the season is played before I declare it the biggest season in the history of the National Football League. But I get promotion and everything else. What effect will a 17th game actually have to do? Will there be more injured? Will we scrutinize it? Will we over scrutinize? Will it come down to week 17? How does adding another game above and beyond adding millions of dollars to the coffers of the NFL, how will it actually affect the play on the field this season?
Well, you know what's really funny? There have been a few players in history, and I think Jerry Rice comes to mind right off the bat, that have played 17 games in a regular season. They wind up getting traded or moving to another team that didn't have their bye week.
Yeah.
By the way, I know you guys will recall this. The USFL played 18 games regular season.
That's the iconic USFL, Russell.
Yeah, the iconic.
Jody yelled at me. By the way, Russell, you will know because you're a research guy. I said the USFL was a big deal in its time because they stole so many players. The Jim Kellys of the world, the Anthony Carters, Gary Zimmerman, Reggie White started. Hall of Fame players started in the USFL. And Jody, I was shocked because Jody's been around for a long time like me. I was shocked. He was like, the USFL was a big deal. Tell him, Russell.
The USFL would have survived if they would have stuck with their game plan. I'm not going to go into who wanted to change the game plan and take it out of the spring and so on. And I say that, John, because look at the success that the Arena Football League had for 20 plus years. Okay, they had their old niche. People are craving football. Okay, it's funny you brought up Reggie White. I want to say 1985 he played close to 30 regular season games because he played in the USFL and later played in the NFL.
Yeah,
the same year.
Yeah.
So 17 game season. Honestly, Jody, I was hoping they'd go for an 18 game season like the USFL. And this is why I say that. And this is what you could have done to schedule. Now, it's interesting that the 17th game, they chose to be an interconference game rather than a conference game. See, now you know how the slotted thing works, okay? Say you're a team in the NFC East and I'll say just Washington because they won, okay? You know you play another division. You know you play another 4 games against the conference, and you play your own division, and then you play the other first-place teams in your conference that you are not originally facing. To me, if you would have gone to 18 games, you could have had a home and home with those other 2 teams in the conference, the first-place teams. And think of it, maybe we get to see Buffalo and Kansas City twice in a year, okay? Maybe we get to see New Orleans and Green Bay twice in the year. And, listen, you guys also remember the old last place schedule when there were 5 teams.
Yeah.
That's when it really was a last place schedule because you play the last place teams twice in your conference. So, sports has changed so much. I understand the safety issues and all that. But I also, I go back to an era in baseball, and I'm not the biggest baseball expert or maven at all. I remember getting up as a kid and read the paper and see Wilbur Wood's win-loss record, 25-24. Okay? Those guys all pitch. They pitch long times. It's now pitching is de-emphasized. It's almost like playing time is somewhat de-emphasized. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I just told Jody last week I was down a baseball wormhole, and somehow I ended up on Catfish Hunter, and I'm looking at complete games, and it was like 30-something, 30-something complete games. And I'm like, wow, how much has this game changed? But everybody's like that. And certainly from an NFL standpoint, they call it load management in the NBA. The players are concerned about that extra game. Mm-hmm. But we know, Russell, they're getting 18 games, but it's a process. You got to get there with negotiation with the union. Do you think they have to have a second bye week when they go to 18 games? Because I hear this about the 17-game schedule, and I'm thinking to myself, well, if one bye week is fine with 16 games, why does an extra game make 2 mandatory? I kind of don't understand that part of it.
Well, of course, I go back to the days where there were no bye weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. But I will point this out. In 1993, we did have an 18-game season. I'm sorry, an 18-week season. And every team did have 2 bye weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I never understood the reason why. It was the first year of free agency, which had no bearing. There was no off week between the Super Bowl that week either, John. But here's what I found. Early in the season, a team would play 3 or 4 games, and then they'd be off. And they'd play 4 or 5 games, and then they'd be off. And there was no rhythm to the football whatsoever. It's like watching the first – you know how the first month of the season now is very choppy? At least I think it is. There's no continuity. The offensive linemen haven't gelled together, which is so important and so on. We see teams get hot later in the year because they don't know who the hell they are in the beginning of the year. So, Kansas City struggles on defense, get their act together, win the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay 7-5, get their act together and win the Super Bowl. Okay, so there's no rhythm to the early season. I mean, I'm going to sound like the fuddy-duddy here. There was almost better football when we had a 16-game season than no off weeks.
Let me borrow your fuddy-duddy cap here, which I have no problem wearing and being Mr. Negative. Bunch of superstar quarterbacks in this league during this offseason have had issues. Russell Wilson, not long after the season was over, done with, made it pretty well known that he wasn't completely happy in Seattle. We got that Rodgers guy. Maybe you've heard he's got some issues with Green Bay.
I heard he's headed to the Lakers. By the way, I think that's the latest rumor. Okay,
we know he wants the West Coast, so the Lakers would fill that void for him. And Deshaun Watson has all of his problems down in Tech. It keeps the National Football in the daily conversation, which is a good thing. But other than Russell Wilson, who seems to have mended fences with Seattle, we don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to play football this year. Shoot, right. We don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to play football this year. He might just say, yeah, I'll go do the Jeopardy thing for a year. You don't want to trade me, Green Bay? I'll step away for a year. I'll announce my retirement and let the world know that I'll come back anytime anybody asks. How does the NFL manage this? They're as good at public relations and keeping the NFL fans satiated with information. But when you're losing superstar players at that position, it's got to be a loss, right? Is the NFL actually looking at issues this offseason with star players not being available to quarterback teams?
Well, I've never been the one who says any publicity is good publicity. I can tell you that. I've never bought into that whatsoever. And, I know Mark Murphy came out and made a statement recently about, the Aaron Rodgers situation dividing the fan base. And I think it's divided more than just the fan. I think it's divided NFL fans because he is such a prolific. Aaron Rodgers blows me away when I watch him. I've never seen a person, listen, Dan Marino had an unbelievable race, but I've never seen anybody throw the ball like Aaron Rodgers. And again, I'm just going to do regular season. He's been in the league since 2005. He's been the starting quarterback since 2008. I know he's gotten hurt. He's thrown over 400 touchdown passes, and he still hasn't thrown 100 picks. Okay? I mean, and don't tell me that's just throwing the ball away. This is a magical player. He's a right now, the league MVP from this past season is in limbo. Okay? And there's no way that can be good at all. I don't care if you're a talk show host or TV show host or anything like that. Now we're into mandatory OTAs and he's not there. So this thing is not getting any better anytime soon. Now we have seen other holdouts and so on, but I don't think a holdout is ever good for the league. And of course, the Deshaun Watson situation is kind of taken on a different tone with everything that's really going on with him and so on. But I mean, think about it. You've got one guy who's the league MVP and one guy who led the league in passing yards. And both of them are in the news for the wrong reasons, basically.
Russell, one of the issues the NFL has this season as well, and by the way, the NFL's popularity, I want to frame it like this, often hurts them in weird ways. And I say that because they get dragged into larger societal issues, which, they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. But now we're talking about vaccination, and we're talking about NFL players and NFL coaches. And Brandon Beane out in Buffalo says, you know what? If some guy's going to not be able to play because he doesn't get vaccinated versus a guy who does get vaccinated can play, I might cut the unvaccinated player. Probably shouldn't have said that. Definitely shouldn't have said that. Got into a little bit of trouble. How do you handle this issue? I mean, it's a really difficult issue. You can't just punish unvaccinated players, but the NFL's got to go forward as best they can. Is there a scenario that can make this a little bit easier?
Well, I mean, I know the league in the past has, lack of a better word, mandated certain things players and coaches aren't supposed to say and so on. And I agree with you 100%. That came so far out of left field.
Yeah.
You know, it was like somebody like, it was like 3 or 4 guys sitting around an office and like overthinking things. Okay. I thought the league did the best it could with COVID last year. Okay. The fact that they had to shift things around with the schedule, it's like, I used to kid around it. It was like a Rubik's Cube, but it all fell in place when it was all said and done. I didn't understand that at all. What he was really talking about is, you know, listen, the Bills are now one of the high-profile teams back in the league again, and so on. They're on a rise. They've been in the playoffs for about 15, 16 years, and now they've been there 3 times in 4 years. So I didn't understand where that came from at all. But unfortunately, the entire world now is an open mic. It really is. Between social media and stuff that we're doing and Zoom calls and everything, there are no secrets anymore. I mean, I feel bad for Richard Nixon because he would have never been able to keep a secret that he did on Twitter, and goodness knows he might have, you know, you get my point. I mean, you really got to be careful with what you say, because it takes all of 3 minutes to have it scrutinized left and right.
Yeah, you got to be careful if you're circling those wagons and you're going to determine how to do it by who is or isn't vaccinated. You got to be careful with that kind of stuff. All right, Russell, we need your national columnist opinion on the hometown team, because we've commented a lot about how everyone's got their power rankings out there. Peter King just a couple of weeks ago slotted the Eagles in at number 28 out of 32 teams in the National Football League. For those not good at math, that's not good. That means there's only 4 teams worse than the Eagles, in Peter's opinion. How low is low? I'm sure you're doing your evaluating of all the teams in the National Football League. Neither John nor I are putting the Eagles into the Super Bowl, but we both think they're a little better than the 5th best team out of 32 in the National Football League. What kind of a power ranking, where do you think the Eagles fall in the power listing of the NFL teams, knowing that we've still got months to go before the season starts, but we all do this from time to time?
I'm actually working on a piece, an off-season piece on the last place teams from a year ago, which is hard to believe. You go from the Super Bowl, but listen, it doesn't take long. The Eagles went from Super Bowl champion to last place in 3 years. San Francisco went from Super Bowl participant to last place in less than a year. Okay. And a lot of that, I understand, had to do with injuries. To me, the Eagles are less about deficiency and more about mystery. Okay. I mean, this is a new look team with a new look coaching staff, a quarterback who saw some action last year, a defense that fell off, even though they still have a lot of quality defensive linemen, but their defense is been deteriorating. The team gave up the most sacks in the league last year, and I know that had to do with key injuries on the offensive line. I look at the NFC East, and Dallas, listen, I know they drafted 8 defensive players of their 11 picks, okay? They still got a ways to go to get those guys to gel. If I'm in the NFC East, I'm concerned about Washington and the Giants because of what they are on defense. Washington more with the pass rush in that front 4. The Giants kind of remind me of Seattle earlier, in the early years. Logan Ryan and Jabril Peppers really came on as a leader and a force on that Giant. Joe Judge, they're 0-5, they go 6-5. So to me, the Eagles, the E stands for enigma as of right now of what exactly they're going to be. And again, the strength of the team is probably that defensive front. They still have those guys, but it was a team that for other reasons of the ball struggled to stop the run. And I'm if you can't stop the run, you can't stop anything. Okay. Because not stopping the run opens so many other things up. Our friend Tom Jackson used to say, no defense is great unless they're great against the run. And I kind of believe that as well. So I think they're kind of a mystery team right now. I think it's hard to put them that because it's not a team without talent. Okay, and it's not a team without experienced players. So 28 seems a little low, but to each his own. Okay, I mean that'll change in a month, and then that one will change in a month, and then we'll be in the middle of October, and all of a sudden they'll be number 4.
If you are looking for sort of a surprise coming out of the NFC East, Russell,
right,
do you look at that Washington front, or maybe do you look at that Dallas Cowboy skill position group? Because if you add Dak Prescott back to Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup and Ezekiel Elliott, oh, by the way, they had a ton of injuries on the offensive line.
Yes.
So Zach Martin's back. Teron Smith is back. La'el Collins is back. Dallas looks pretty good on paper, at least on the offensive side.
Well, what was interesting about Dallas was Mike McCarthy takes over. Okay, they still had the aura of a power football team in terms of Ezekiel Elliott. He's almost been like de-emphasized. Okay, it's more about throwing the ball and taking advantage of those 3 wide receivers. And it's weird because it kind of reminds me of what Mike McCarthy did eventually with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. They abandoned balance. Okay, it became him carrying the football team, and then once he was out, they were helpless. So I think that lack of balance, that lack of physical presence, the offensive line also hurts the defense. Okay, and of course Mike Nolan turned out to be a 1-year disaster. Let's face it. I mean, they were just absolutely horrendous. To me, the Giants. I've already mentioned the Giants. The Giants defense bears watching, and if Daniel Jones can pick up where he left off last year, which was not dropping the ball and also tripping when no one's around and he's running down the field, okay, you get Barkley back. Their offensive line is a little bit of a question mark, though. So to me, the Giants, I think, are the team that could sneak up. But, think about this. It's 2 years in a row that no team in the NFC East has won 10 games.
Yep.
2 years in a row. I have to go back and I don't know if that's happened very often.
Yeah, it's been a bad division. The Giants, one thing that concerns me, Russell, about the Giants, maybe I'm overblowing it, but I like Dalvin Tomlinson as a player. I'm surprised they let him off.
You're not overblowing it at all. Okay. I totally agree with you. And Minnesota had a disaster on defense last year. I mean, you don't see that at Mike Zimmer. I think they went from giving up, I'm cheating. They went from giving up 303 points to 475.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No Daniel Hunter. He missed the whole season. Their pass rush was cut in half. I totally agree with you. And I know Leonard Williams is coming off a career year, but Dalvin Tomlinson is a big loss for the Giants. And it is a huge pickup for Minnesota, who's trying to rebound on that defensive ball. I think you're 120% spot on with that.
All right, Russell, need your opinion on rookie head coaches. You've been following the league and teams for a long period of time. It's a tough spot to step into when you've never been a head coach before. If you've had some experience elsewhere, you're getting your second chance or your third chance, a little bit more feasible, and you can go in and do things, get things accomplished year one. A little tougher when you're getting that first gig, and that's certainly what the Eagles are asking of Nick Sirianni this year. You just mentioned the Giants. Giants did it last year with Joe Judge. And I do think that as the season went on, he got better, they got better. What kind of a fit do you think Sirianni and this Eagle roster is? Agree or disagree? It is pretty difficult for a first-year head coach to be able to find ways to get teams above that 500 mark.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. He's also got a first-year defensive coordinator as well, and he's got somebody who can't, who's going to be learning on the job like he is in terms of that role. So I think that makes it even tougher. I mean, you see some rookie head coaches around the league throughout the years who wind up hiring someone who has previous head coaching experience that can help them guide them. I mean, again, I remember when Sean McVay joined the Rams, he hired Wade Phillips, or they hired Wade Phillips. And Wade's been not only a great defensive coordinator throughout the years, he's been a solid coach. When you said rookie head coach, the first thing that popped into my mind was Arthur Smith down in Atlanta. Okay. He wasn't even really a coordinator that long in Tennessee. But do you know what they did? They managed to coax Dean Pease out of retirement. Okay. And he worked with Dean in Tennessee. And Tennessee's defense has not been the same since Dean Pease left, even though Mike Rabel was there. And last year they really couldn't commit on, I'm calling the plays, you're calling the plays, blah, blah, blah. And they've kind of settled in on that now. Okay. But I think a rookie head coach, I don't know how, because Atlanta they were horrible. They gave the most passing yards in the league last year. But I think it's going to be tough for Sirianni because everyone's going to be learning together. You've got a relatively new quarterback. You've got guys who don't have that experience. And being a head coach, as you know, in this league is so much different than just being a play caller.
Yeah, it's interesting, Russell. We mentioned that earlier in the show, Sean McVay with Wade Phillips. I even went, Matt LaFleur he had Mike Patton, who had been a head coach. Here in Philadelphia, yes. Doug Peterson had Jim Schwartz. On and on. Matt Nagy had Vic Fangio, who wasn't a head coach, but been around forever and is now a head coach. I don't see that for Nick Sirianni. Jonathan Gannon, as you mentioned, first-time defensive coordinator. Michael Clay is the youngest coordinator in the NFL, the special teams coordinator. They have the youngest position coach, Nick Rollis. Look, I don't want to be an ageist, a reverse ageist, but I do think there's something to experience, and there's nothing to lean on. Am I being too pessimistic?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it lends to what I said about them being a mystery team. Okay. I mean, they're going to bear watch in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. Okay. Because they're going to make mistakes. And I'm sure down in Philadelphia, which is my hometown, by the way, and so on, the first sign of weakness or a bad call or a questionable call, everybody's going to kind of jump on all over it and so on. But yeah, it's, you just don't come in here and become Vince Lombardi in 6 weeks. Okay. And if you don't have somebody who can guide you through the rough edges, again, they're all going to be learning together. Okay. I mean, it's like throwing 5 people in a room and telling them to build a car and none of them can drive.
That's a bit of an issue. All right. Russell, who is a great follow on Twitter at Bax Football Guru, is always putting up informational nuggets. And I checked it out today, and you are tremendous at the countdowns as well. How many days till that Hall of Fame game? How many days till opening day for the other 30 teams in the National Football League?
Well, 91 days till the NFL season opener, so that's Kevin Green, okay? And 56 days. I don't have to tell you who 56 days is until the Hall of Fame game.
Unfortunately, know that number pretty well.
Although, you know what's funny? I actually got retweeted by the people who run Andre Tippett's account today. He was a great 56. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but of course, Lawrence Taylor and so on. I appreciate that. I have fun with the countdown.
I'm going to throw Chris Dolman out there.
He's on there. I don't just do one, John. I'm pretty thorough. And the thing I get more of a kick out of anything now is watching the former players who I tag retweet it and then follow me. Like yesterday, Dwight Stevenson follows me. Okay. Carl Banks follows me. Take your pick, different guys. Chad Brown, the old Steelers linebacker, and so on. Seth Joyner, who I've gotten to know a little bit at other things and TV and golf tournaments and stuff like that. As soon as 59 comes up, out it goes. And now that some of these numbers are better than others. 75, 88, number 12. I haven't gotten Tom Brady or Terry Bradshaw to follow me back yet. So
I'm surprised Tom hasn't followed you. Keep working on it. He's a social. Yeah, he's a social. I'm going to give you a countdown, a local Philadelphia countdown. It's 5, Russell, and 5 is a big number because in 5 days, Nick Sirianni turns 40, and with that, I assume comes great wisdom when he turns over to 40 years old.
There you go. I mean, I was just kind of flip-flopping between Joe Flacco and Donovan McNabb there. So
that makes more sense.
Or Paul Hornung.
Yes.
It's been some pretty damn good 5s. Russell, great stuff. We appreciate you coming on with us. We will tap into your insight again that much more as the season plays along. Hope you enjoyed your time here on Birds 365. We are going to suck you back in again. Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely. A lot of fun. Again, John, it's a pleasure to meet you as well.
Thanks, Russell.
Russell Baxter, NFL columnist, has been doing it for decades and been good enough to hop on my radio shows. We will now drag him in on our YouTube shows as well. You're okay with that, right? You're okay with Russell?
Yeah, love Russell. Love a historian. Russell's an historian. That's my wheelhouse.
Every year I did the NFL draft for whatever radio station I was working, mostly WFAN, a couple times WIP. I think I made 13 out of 15 drafts. In a 15-year period, I hosted a show from the NFL draft 13 times. One year, I think they had Mets doubleheader, so they had no need for NFL draft coverage. And the other, I had a wedding to go to. But I went to 13 out of 15. And hanging with Russell Baxter, Chris Berman, a bunch of the ESPN guys after I'd left ESPN, both during the draft and then after the draft, till the wee hours of the morning for
that's the best part.
Celebration are some of the best football talking days I've ever had. All right, we'll come back, put a bow on the show. We got a couple of minutes left here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.